All right.
Welcome to season two, I should say run two, of All on the Table's superhero game, Vigilantes Union Local 13. You know me, I'm Jen Giggles. I'm kind of the lead figure around here. I'm also a player in this particular game. I play Ghost, who phases and sometimes goes into different dimensions.
And hi there, I'm Dana Freeby, and I'm playing Amber, who is just a big friendly puppy dog with super strength and can fly, and she's pretty much bulletproof, but otherwise just normal girl who's trying to make a difference in the world.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ben Ravensdale. I am the Game Master for Vigilantes Union Local 13, and I will be coming up with whatever nefarious plot the heroes today have to deal with. Welcome. So, we are going to fade in on the scene today. Before we get to the main action, a couple of things that are kind of important to note. The big one being, the Vigilantes Union vote has taken place. The results have been tallied, and the city of Portland, Oregon is the newest city in the United States to feature officially a Vigilantes Union chapter. There is a fair amount of debate on the matter. It didn't pass unanimously by any margin. It was probably a good 70-30 split, give or take, a margin of 5 points or so. There are a lot of people saying that the whole thing was kind of a sham, and etc. There's a very vocal minority out there, headed up by a few people who we may have seen before in our adventures. One of whom is a reporter with the Portland Portent, known. His name is Brock Kentman. He's very vocal about his opinion that that heroes are causing some issues, or that they may be more trouble than they're worth. Specifically, Brock is throwing out some conspiracy theories and things like that. It's very, very opinionated on the matter of Ghost, essentially deciding that to take it into her hands, or well, to put it in the hands of someone else, to stab some supervillain to death on camera. There's a whole thing for. This is where in the comic books you'd get that little dialogue blurb box down in the corner that says "See issue number whatever." So I think that was probably the last episode at this point, based on the recording schedule. But
It is definitely issue 10 of Run 1, the
thank
last
you.
issue.
So, but yeah, the vote has gone through. The formal announcement of the team has not been made public yet. However, both of you have been kind of you signed your paperwork ahead of time, but Deirdre does contact both of you offline and just say, like, it looks like everything's going through. You'll be invited for a press release very, very shortly with the rest of the team, so you can all meet up. But that has not happened yet. This is only a few days after everything wrapped up with Amber and Blockade and Ghost and Leviathan. So it's been a busy couple of days, to say the least. But the major thing that's going on right now, the scene that we open up on, is Amber in the history department for the university, which I believe, if I remember correctly, we said it was. Why am I blanking on this? Thank you, Portland State. Yes, it is. It is within the history department of Portland State. One of the rooms that was not damaged when things happened on campus recently, and specifically, Amber is there with Eliza. And with the intrepid photographer whose name I totally have not forgotten. Timmy Wilson is the photographer. Yeah, so it's Eliza and Timmy are there. Eliza is there specifically to conduct an interview with Professor Jada Davis, one of the heads of the history department at Portland State. And Amber, you've been invited along sort of in your role as sort of like a field intern slash assistant. Eliza has. It's weird. Eliza seems to be like having you come out into the field with her more and more as she's covering stories ever since things kind of kicked off. It's almost like she wants to keep a closer eye on you, but Amber is kind of oblivious and has no idea. So
I'm sure it's just that she likes having me around and she wants to mentor me.
yeah, exactly. That's exactly right.
Speaking of which, am I there as basically to take notes or to lift heavy things?
Mostly to lift heavy things.
Okay.
So once everything was kind of set up, and it's weird because there's really not a whole lot of heavy lifting to be done because she takes all of her notes like on pen and paper, and there isn't any video equipment. It's just Timmy with his camera. But that's the reason she gave you.
Okay.
So basically, you kind of got everything set up, and Timmy kind of like puts up like one of those lights, like the extendable light posts, like poles and everything like that, just to kind of take slightly better pictures. And so you're kind of like off to the side while they're chatting and getting things set up. Ghost, you're not here involved in this particular event. You're probably on campus, either in class or doing some of your TA duties.
Yeah.
So, but you're not here in the room to start off with. The only other person in the room is a gentleman by the name of Professor James Holland, one of the other heads of the history department here at Portland State. He is sort of there kind of like as a novelty. When he arrived, Professor Davis seemed a little bit like, not annoyed, just like, why are you here? Was kind of the reaction she had. Amber, whether or not Amber noticed is beside the point, but that's the vibe. Yeah. Professor Holland is kind of standing back, just kind of observing, and once everything's set up, he kind of starts chatting with you, Amber, off to the side, just about like, random topics, nothing particularly important.
Okay.
But he does turn it towards the topic of the interview within a couple of minutes, and specifically the interview is about this like weird crystal heart that was retrieved from the campus after the whole fight with Leviathan. Like there were shards of this thing, and there were some rumors that it was some crystal heart that was retrieved from, like, it was dredged up from the bottom of the ocean or something like that, and there's all kinds of weird rumors swirling around about it. And so that's what Eliza is here to talk to Professor Davis about.
Amber's gonna basically have her, since she doesn't have to carry stuff around right now, she's gonna pull out her pencil and notepad and basically be, writing down what he says and sort of practicing interviewing him for this, figuring that maybe Eliza can use it as, another source or background confirmation or something like that.
Okay. Perfect. Yeah. The second you kind of turn it into a more like pseudo formal interview, he just like laps it up. Like he is totally fine with having some attention from the press, it seems.
And she will, I mean, she's kind of oblivious, but she does know that Eliza's in charge here. So she will shoot her a look as if to say, is this okay what I'm doing?
Eliza gives you like a very surreptitious kind of thumbs up and a nod. Very clearly keep that guy over there and keep him occupied with other stuff so I can interview the person I'm here to talk to.
Okay.
Eliza's dealt with people like Professor Holland before. She recognizes the type that are going to try to like take center stage if they're given the opportunity. And so the conversation continues for a moment, and then Professor Holland kind of directs Amber a little bit closer to the table to talk about these chunks of this weird kind of sodium salt lake crystal that made up the heart. And there's also actually there is the hilt of a dagger, as well as a couple pieces of metallic shards from the blade, it seems like. And the ghost, I saw a reaction there.
There's definitely photos from when, Jessa had taken pictures of the heart that have been printed out.
That is a great point. Yes, because you had done that. So there are some comparison photos there or reference photos there as well.
Amber will, if Timmy is not busy, doing other stuff, she will, sort of motion him over to get some pictures of that, just so that we have them, if he hasn't already done it.
So he got some of the pictures of the table itself, but he's still kind of he's taking pictures of Eliza with you in the background. He gets pictures of Professor Davis with Professor Holland in the background, and kind of he does a few different angles and everything that to get some different shots with different people in them and stuff like that.
I'll pull out my phone and just take some, oh, that's very interesting. Mind if I take pictures of this just so that we have them in case, I forget. Dana doesn't know what they would call it in the news business, but basically B-roll.
As you're doing that, he kind of leans down, and he kind of without touching you, he kind of tries to direct your attention a little bit closer in, and specifically on some of the bits of metal from the dagger's blade. There are, and he's kind of trying to point out these very intricate kind of patterns and swirls and and everything like that, and he's kind of pontificating on the meaning of them, whether they're purely decorative or there's some sort of cultural significance, or he's really kind of going off about these various possible theories. As he's doing that, you hear Timmy fiddles with his camera for a second, goes, "That's weird." And I would say that Amber probably doesn't really respond to that because of, again, the aforementioned obliviousness. And just as Amber is starting to pay attention to this stuff in this dagger, Professor Holland does the thing where he's kind of following the design with drawing the design with his finger in the air above the dagger blade, and then he does this kind of motion that's kind of almost like a swooping motion. And it seems like the dagger blade, it spins the needle of a compass, and all of a sudden it stops with the jagged part pointing at you, Amber, and then it shoots across the table and stabs into your arm.
Okay. Wow, you don't see that every day. That literally is her response to it.
Professor Holland says, "Oh my goodness, what? That's very odd." And he kind of reaches over to pull the piece of blade out of your arm.
She'll pull it out. Actually, did it even go through her skin?
It did, and as you pull it out, it draws blood.
Amber actually pauses at that for a second.
Professor Holland takes that moment of hesitation. He says, "Oh my goodness, we can't contaminate the." And he kind of reaches over and kind of pulls the blade out of your fingers, or out from between your fingers.
No, he doesn't.
So the second his fingers touch it, the second his fingers touch it, if you don't let it go, there is a blinding flash of light in the room. I'm going to need a strength action from you, please.
All right.
To resist the effects of it.
Okay, well, I'll play this 5 here.
Okay.
And that's the 5 of strength. I will draw another card here. Trying to actually... Oh, sorry. Still not quite used to this. Okay, well...
That's all right.
There we go. Another 2. So that's 7. So 21.
Okay. So I want to move those over to the discard. You can go and draw that card back. you are not blinded by this in any capacity. However, this blinding flash of light is like immediately precedes a. It's basically a shock wave that sends Timmy, because he's standing, sends him like flying backwards into the wall. Eliza and Professor Davis, who are both sitting kind of with their backs basically towards the two of you, they go like hurtling across the room. The chairs go tumbling after them, and you see very clearly Professor Holland, who is pretty average looking guy. He's kind of got like sandy brown hair, some gray in it, and everything like that. Kind of average, like nearing middle age college professor. Suddenly, like all of that just kind of like melts away, and there is a very tall, probably about 6'3", very thin man with very harsh features, like very high cheekbones, a very pronounced nose, like a very like pronounced chin. He's got kind of scraggly facial hair that it's almost like the hair on top of his head basically merges with his beard via like his sideburn like mutton chops.
Right.
And it's very kind of frizzy, very unkempt. He's no longer wearing kind of like the almost cliched like tweed jacket with the patches at the elbows and everything like that, is replaced by this very kind of loose shirt with like kind of billowy arms. He's kind of got like a satchel, a leather satchel across his chest, and he's got basically like a staff type thing in one hand, and like he's still got his fingers on the blade, and he kind of like makes eye contact with you for half a second, and then he disappears from view, and the blade goes with him. Hello, everybody. Thanks very much for joining us for another issue of Vigilantes Union Local 13. We have our second team up kicking off this time round. We've got Kinetic Justice, the legacy superhero, growing into his own. And we have Dr. Scott, also known as the Impossible Possum, I think is kind of the tongue-in-cheek catchphrase.
Probably, but not like by her or anything, just by people who are frustrated with her.
Fair enough. So it's not so much the Impossible Possum as in like the Incredible Hulk. It's more like this lady is impossible. She also happens to be a possum.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's fair. That's cantankerous. I like it. So when last we left off with these two heroes, they were in their own solo adventures, and everything was kind of dovetailing towards the Union vote for the city of Portland, Oregon. That is now a short time after that vote has gone through, and it did pass. There was a little bit of hue and outcry, some media coverage of a particular hero apparently stabbing a villain to death on camera, which is not actually what happened, but that's the way it was spun by several media outlets, was enough to kind of cause a little bit of a last-minute crisis on the voting end of things. But it did manage to pass, and as such, the new Vigilantes Union Chapter 13, or Local 13, is now in place. Dr. Scott and KJ have both been sort of tapped as the sort of field leaders for the team, owing to Dr. Scott having been around a little while and being a little bit older, a little bit more mature, and Kinetic Justice, or KJ, having been raised kind of in the superhero community and having a fair amount of experience with that, at least on his masked persona. Nobody knows who he is publicly. So it's a couple days later, and you have all the details have been seen to, all the lines have been dotted, or the I's have been dotted, the T's have been crossed, and you have your official Vigilantes Union headquarters. It is not a fancy building. It's not swanky by any means. It's essentially a small corporate building that is in sort of like an industrial park, but it's relatively removed from the city at large. It's conveniently located that if you need to get downtown, you can easily zip over there to deal with an emergency. But it's also very clearly like there's a little bit of a buffer between the surrounding like actual neighborhoods and businesses and this building. There are a few outbuildings that are part of the campus for like any maintenance work or anything that needs to be done. Like there's a garage. There's probably Dr. Scott. Your lab space is probably in one of these kind of like converted from a garage space. Did you ever see the old show Mythbusters?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's kind of like
There's lab. Excellent.
Exactly. It's located far enough away that you're not going to blow up the rest of the building if things go badly. Also, your possum friends are not going to be
Troublesome.
they're not be as troublesome. Let's be honest. They'll still be troublesome, just not as bad.
Yeah. He's working out of the sewers.
That's true. There's reliable power here and an internet connection. So, but yeah, I would say that you guys. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, KJ.
Is there a crime lab?
Yeah. There's probably stuff to do, like basic forensic analysis and things like that. You still would probably benefit, like both of you would still probably benefit from going to places that are set up explicitly and exclusively for these functions, like going to the police precinct and talking to their CSI team and stuff like that will yield you probably better results than your own lab would. Dr. Scott,
I am a genetics expert.
that is true. Yes. Going to TechMat could yield you some better results, higher power equipment and stuff like that to analyze things. So, you don't have to rely on those things, but they're available to you in addition to your basic facilities you've got here. Also, as a slight retcon / call out to the previous adventure with Dr. Scott, where I believe I erroneously referred to the posse as raccoons a couple of times. They are all possums, with the exception of Petey, who is canonically a raccoon, but just thinks he's a possum. All of
Control him.
all of your powers still apply to him for some strange reason, but he is a raccoon.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to make a note of that too, because
Just a little bit confused. Doesn't really know what he is.
he knows
Less is a little hard.
he knows he's hungry. That's good enough. Okay, so yeah, you've basically been given kind of the tour. You've had the chance to kind of settle your stuff in. Couple of quick logistical things. Dr. Scott, are you settled exclusively in the headquarters, or are you maintaining a little hideaway in the sewers as well?
I think it would be politic, given some of Dr. Scott's contacts, extracurricular activities, that she still maintains a sort of like a bolt hole, essentially, where she can meet up with other people and so on.
KJ, you have a secret identity.
True.
Are you still maintaining the detective agency gig outside of the union?
Yes.
Okay.
Probably just RM investigations.
RM investigations, I like it.
Something simple. Yeah.
I think we're going to open up formally the issue with the two of you being introduced, but we all know that isn't an actual introduction. It's more of a reintroduction or reunion, but I'll let the two of you tackle that. We'll assume that you are. We'll set the scene in the break room for the Union building. Say break room, it's actually more of an entire floor. There's like a rec room. It's got a little like sort of a truncated little kitchenette set up. There's a fridge. There's a microwave. There's a sink. There's a little bit of counter and cupboard space. There's like a foosball table, an air hockey table. There's a couple of couches. There's like a couple of water dispensers, a coffee machine. It's pretty like trendy startup corporate, is what I would describe it as. But very clearly they were like, we don't know what these people are going to be into, so we're just going to put stuff in here. There is also a TV in case that matters. But yeah, that's the setting that you both would have been told by Deirdre. You should meet your fellow field team leader in the break room at this time. She's not there because, frankly, she doesn't really like hanging out with superheroes very much, but she does tell both of you that that's where you can meet each other.
I have access to, like, files of all the people that have signed up for the Union.
You do. So there are currently 5 heroes on the payroll, so to speak. There's yourself and Kinetic Justice, of course. There is Amber. There's Ghost. And then there is there is Compiler, a robotic or like android entity that is the talk of some debates on the media about like what this means for like artificial rights and things like that. It's a whole conversation that's going on behind the scenes, which will probably come up more when Compiler joins the team up.
Okay, I imagine Dr. Scott is fashionably late as usual. She probably like comes
Fashionably.
in with like some of her associates, by which I mean possums and possums. And they'll be like all under her feet and stuff, and she'll be like carrying a huge mug of coffee, and like an armful of like brown manila files, old-fashioned style files, which have coffee stains all over them as well. Just kind of like push the door open and be like, "Golly, Peter, get out from under my feet! God damn it! You want a cookie? Okay, here you go." Like, puts these files down, sits down heavily with a sigh, scratching her furry head and curling her possumy tail kind of around the leg of the chair. She sits down kind of instinctively. She's just poring over the files. Okay, what we got here?
As a quick interjection, the kind of like the support staff, custodial staff, were informed to put a combination lock on the refrigerator and to put a like a child safety latch on the garbage can. So
Amazing. All right. Do I have access to those same files, or do I get redacted versions?
So you both get redacted versions. The union has a very strict policy about maintaining secret identities. So no information about people's personal lives is included unless the person has opted in. At which at no point at this point nobody has.
Okay.
You know, so,
that I don't know who
Yeah.
anybody is beyond there.
correct.
Fair enough. Yeah. All right. Yeah, KJ is already there, just kind of in like leaning like probably when you walk in. I imagine you can't see him because he's leaning like the refrigerator sticks out from the counter, so he's like kind of hidden behind the fridge. Just leaned up against the counter, drinking coffee.
Is he wearing some sort of costume, or is he just kind of...
Yes, he is fully in costume. Dr. Scott?
Don't Don't jump out on me like that. Oh,
You get a half dozen possums all rear back and like hissing.
just lurking there behind the refrigerator.
I wouldn't call it. Well, maybe I am. Blame my upbringing. Yeah, I've just been waiting for you. So, hello,
You're okay?
I'm KJ. Yeah.
AJ. Kinetic Justice. Well, I guess it's a name.
It's no ghost, but I'll work with it.
You know, these things are just a practicality.
Yeah, I mean,
Take them too
could-
seriously.
you mean like Dark Vengeance?
Yeah.
I was
exactly.
literally about to say it could be Dark Vengeance. So
Gotta watch out for those edgelords. You're not an edgelord, are you, KJ?
Don't think so.
Good.
Petey has wobbled over to like seems to have gotten over the initial startle of KJ's presence and has waddled over and is currently trying to climb up onto the refrigerator, kind of fiddling with the lock, and kind of shoots KJ a look like, I know you know how to get into this, and kind of like rattles the lock a little bit.
That's Petey.
Hello, Petey.
But he thinks he's a possum. Don't spoil his dreams. That's Dolly
You know-
down there. She is a possum, as you can see.
Yes. Who am I to argue about how people want to see themselves? I put on a costume every night, so.
That's true. That's a pretty fruity choice to make every day. But we got a lot of fruity people in this organization, from what I see. I'm just looking through these files. I don't really know. She sighs and she just plumps them down. And you can see
Yeah.
that they're covered in coffee stains and crumbs and all sorts. Like, she clearly doesn't have, like, a very meticulous attitude to keeping hold
Yeah.
of these files or anything.
All right. So while you're kind of chatting back and forth, there's a sudden like, it's not an alarm like a fire alarm, or like the kind of alarm you would hear at like a fire station. It's more of a tone that sounds, and when it does, you hear the intercom overhead kind of like click on. It's not like a public school intercom. It's a little bit more effective than that. Like it's a little bit more digital, so it sounds nice and smooth and everything like that. But it's effectively the same thing. It was like making overhead announcements. The voice overhead says, "Class 4 situation reported. Portland Police Department requesting union presence," and then it gives a location. Specifically, it is a park. One that Dr. Scott was, oddly enough, it's one you were at just recently. Hello, everybody. Welcome back, intrepid viewers. Welcome back, heroes. I am Ben Ravensdale, and we're here for another installment, another episode, another issue of Vigilantes Union Local 13. Today, we've got a slightly different pair of heroes to engage with the story that I've concocted. We'll do some quick introductions. Let's start Let's start alphabetically by character name. So I think that's going to be Compiler first.
I suppose it is. Hi. I'm Patch. I also use the name Nobody, so whichever you prefer, whatever's easier. They, them pronouns. Today I will be playing the role of Compiler, a robot which was supposed to be a supervillain's greatest triumph, and then said, maybe I'll just not do that instead. Compiler uses its pronouns.
And my name is Micah Hind. I am a storyteller and historical interpreter and writer and general all-round dog's body performer. And I will be playing Dr. Heather Scott, who is a cynical, middle-aged, done with it, geneticist, super scientist who has unfortunately had a little bit of an accident in her previous employments that saw her transformed into a half-human, half-possum monstrosity.
Hey, monstrosity, that's a matter of interpretation, I think.
That's how she feels.
Okay, that's fair, that's fair. A lot of people think possums are adorable, thank you very much. Welcome to both Compiler and Dr. Scott.
Yeah.
Dr. Scott, we've seen a little bit of what you get up to in your daily life here at the Vigilantes Union compound. I think compound is maybe giving it more gravitas than it deserves. The facility, let's say. No, even facility sounds grandiose.
Warehouse.
Office Park. Yeah, there you go. Office Park. But Compiler, I don't think we've seen you since the Vigilantes Union became formalized. I don't know that we know how Compiler has settled in, if at all. Maybe Compiler's still living in that shack on the university campus. Tell me about that.
Honestly, I think it probably is still living in that shack. It really doesn't trust the Union at all. It's only signed on to avoid being sold for scrap, so...
Okay.
I suppose it would probably have some sort of facility at the office park, but I don't know that it spends a whole lot of time there just because the people who, or at least the one woman it talks to in charge of the Union explicitly told it that it basically wasn't trusted or welcome, so...
Yeah, Deirdre's a peach. So, you do in fact have a space at the office park. So there is a separate sort of workshop building, which probably is attached to. It's probably like a multi-bay garage type of thing. One of those spaces has Dr. Scott's laboratory. The other space is probably set up with some basic workshop type layout for you to customize at your discretion, at your leisure, Compiler. Also, you would have an office, like an actual desk with a fairly basic computer in it and shelves office, as well as a relaxation room, which is a smaller room kind of attached to or joined to the office space. Are all of these spaces completely empty, or has Compiler visited the offices at all?
I think it definitely has. I think it's moved some of its smaller personal affects into this area, but it hasn't done a ton of customizing, so it's very much like base level, however it was when it was assigned, with just like a box of stuff in the corner.
Okay. All right. That's fair. I will say that while Compiler was was moving stuff in and kind of getting the lay of the land, there is an assistant essentially at the office park who is he is a new college grad. He actually graduated from Portland State, and as a result, Compiler is considered sort of like the local cryptid at Portland on the Portland State campus, because as we established in the very, very first Compiler episode, Compiler sort of lurked around the campus like really late at night when it needed to go recharge and just kind of generally do whatever business Compiler needed to do. And so there were like sightings and things like that, and like it was sort of this like urban legend type of thing that there was this robot android cyborg that everybody called it something slightly different, that lived on campus. And this guy, his name is Dwayne, and he is just like absolute like starstruck like fanboy over Compiler, and basically,
Oh dear.
probably neglects some of his other duties when Compiler's around, just because like he wants to make sure that Compiler gets what it needs and is happy. So just so you know, Dwayne is around. The jury's still out on exactly how good Dwayne is at his job, but you know he makes up for it with enthusiasm. So yeah.
I guess I should ask, how widely known is Compiler's whole origin deal? I mean, I know Deirdre knows, but does the majority of the Union know that there is effectively a supervillain on the team?
Dr. Scott would know, because Dr. Scott has been given basically kind of write-ups on the rest of the team. Since Dr. Scott
I've got files, but it's 50-50 as to whether she would have read or not. She probably scanned, like...
Would Dr. Scott particularly care about Compiler?
I don't know.
origins?
Does Dr. Scott know about Professor Calamitous?
Oh yeah, like Professor Calamitous and Dr. Scott both kind of operate sort of in that weird nebulous space just outside the respected academic community where like you probably know each other's names. There's like a certain academic and professional like recognition there. If you want to say you've actually met Professor Calamitous, I'm fine with that too, because it would make sense.
Yeah.
Super
That guy.
scientists living on the fringe of society? Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I know him. Self-aggrandizing asshole.
And he's got
Probably.
a weird obsession with like kind of like very cheesy retro tech. Like the way he all of his stuff, like the final product of everything he builds seems like it came out of like a 1950s sci-fi movie.
I mean, you gotta love his style, but man himself, nah. I think that's probably Dr. Scott's attitude.
All right. So let's put you both in the same room. I imagine that there has to be at some point a meeting between the team leader and Compiler. So we're gonna start there with a little bit of the characters getting to know each other formally, having a little bit of a conversation, if you don't mind.
By all means.
Set the scene, Dr. Scott. What are you calling Compiler into the office? Are you like trying to catch Compiler while it's in its workspace, or like or are you going to the campus to find Compiler?
For what it's worth, it would have to visit that workspace relatively often to charge up, since it's not, stealing power from the university anymore.
I think Dr. Scott's quite a sort of hands-off person, but also quite a lazy person. So I think they wouldn't want to like put demands on you and call you into their workspace, office, whatever you want to call it. But they might, if they hear you clumping about, I imagine you're quite clumpy, being a giant
extremely.
robot and all.
We established in a previous adventure for Compiler that Compiler is not stealthy.
In that case, if you're being clumping about in your, I imagine like this subdivided warehouse has very poor sound insulation overall. So I'd probably, except for the bit that I deliberately insulated and put that really good sound system in. I think we established earlier my little little chill zone. So probably on hearing that, I imagine Dr. Scott go, well, looks like the new guy's in. I'm gonna go next door. Petey, Washington, no fighting. Okay. Petey being a small raccoon that thinks he's a possum, and Washington just being a possum, one of several that just hang about in the workshop generally and cause problems for the staff of the facility as a whole.
The current source of tension between Petey and Washington is Petey has a plastic butter knife that has like the remnants of peanut butter smeared on it, and he is jealously clutching at it and like glaring at Washington. So,
you know what? Here, I take the peanut butter lid off the peanut butter jar and just like plop it down on the ground. Have at it, boys and girls. Go on.
So some union intern somewhere is like, why do we go through so much peanut butter?
Okay. Now, no more no touching anything with those peanut butter hands, okay?
Oh,
I know when you've left
heavens.
stains over everything. Okay. Right, so she sort of sidles next door and politely knocks on the, I imagine it's like one of those big metal slidey warehouse door things, like probably quite a resounding clang, clang, clang. Hello, anyone in there?
Yes, please do come in. Apologies, I cannot move at the moment.
Oh, sorry. Hang on. So I'll slide open the door with a deafening rattle and like poke my head around, and you will see this weird-looking anthropomorphized possum head sticking around the corner. And then the rest of her comes around. She's wearing like a white lab coat, a brand new lab coat, in fact, because she just destroyed the other one a few nights before. And she just saunters in and pulls the door closed, sort of wincing a little bit at the noise. Hello? Hello?
Compiler, can you do me a
Compiler,
favor?
I think, is...
Oh, sorry. Can you do me a favor and just describe what it looks like when Compiler is charging? I think which is what you were about to do, so I apologize for interrupting.
Absolutely, yeah. So Compiler is roughly 6'4". It's tall. It's also broad in this sort of like lantern-jawed action hero sort of way. This was built to be a very specific profile. Its face is like just a blank computer screen faceplate, which doesn't currently display anything, and it's just standing next to the wall, rigid. Almost seems like if you pushed it over, it would fall over in one piece immediately. And it just sort of has a plug, exactly, yes, just running out of its left hand and just into a charging socket on the wall.
Oh, wow.
It is also wearing a lab coat, but this coat is much too small. It's clearly scavenged from the garbage.
You are a big boy or girl or robot?
Robot is appropriate. And I think
Okay.
as Compiler talks, the faceplate sort of clicks on. It doesn't have detailed facial features. It's more like Unicode emojis, like colon for eyes and a D for the mouth. That sort of...
Oh, cute.
It does give the illusion of talking, because it sort of... the D flaps into a underscore as it chats, but...
Remind me of my first cell phone.
I cannot say I have been compared to such before.
Well, the thing I liked about that phone is it wasn't always bothering me with social media messages and all that crap. Now they make me have one of these smartphone things. I don't like it. I'm what you might call a little bit old school. You look kind of old school yourself.
I'm going to just
I
interject a little
suppose.
detail here, and that is that there is a small robotic unit of some sort that has
Yes.
essentially formed itself into effectively like a knockoff Roomba, and it's kind of like going behind Dr. Scott, like just hoovering up any stray hairs that she might leave behind.
What's this thing?
Oh, yes, that is my friend Spot. Spot is something of a companion to me after having reclaimed it from my creator.
Oh, I get that. I got my own companions hanging around. Gets lonely when you're in a workshop on your own, in your lab, doing your thing. I guess robots get lonely too.
This is a fair characterization. Although, while robot is accurate, I'm not sure it is the most effective method of describing. It is complicated. Many things are.
What would you like me to refer to you as? I mean, we're going to be working together. Did I introduce myself? I'm Dr. Heather Scott. I'm kind of your boss, but not your boss, but kind of your friendly middle manager kind of boss.
It is a pleasure to see you again, Dr. Scott, or rather for the first time.
Oh, yeah, I got papers here. Think you need to sign some of these things or something? I don't know. Sorry about the coffee stains. I think it's coffee. I don't know. I'm just gonna put that there and you can sign it. I thought everything was digi-signed now, but I guess not. I don't know.
Fascinating. I was also under the impression that I had signed everything that... The bureaucracy. I see.
You do not want to get into it. There's always more stuff to sign. Trust me, I have to do most of it, so you don't need to worry about it.
That seems like an unpleasant fate for an intellect such as yours.
I like this one. Yeah, I think we're gonna get on just great. So, you're, what, recharging right now?
For the moment, yes. It's an unfortunate hiccup of my design. I suppose Professor Calamitous thought he would fix it later, but to this point I have been unable to come up with a solution.
Isn't it safe to just plug into a normal socket like that? You got some sort of internal transformer?
I would have to presume. I strangely am not privy to the specs of my own design.
Really? I mean, it's not really my speciality, but I got a bit of gadgetry know-how. You pick up a few things if you're in the super science business, so you ever want me to have a little rummage around inside? I'm up for that, but obviously that's got to be quite a personal thing. I can't imagine I'd just let anyone rummage around inside my bits and bobs.
While the offer is appreciated, yes, I suspect that I'd rather keep everything in one piece for the moment.
Oh, well, let's just go ahead and assume you've got a functioning transformer in there, and we're not going to have some massive fire or anything because you plugged into the wall.
Thus far, I have managed to avoid catching on fire, so I would assume it is safe.
How far are you through your charging cycle?
Well, I only got here a few minutes ago, so about 80%.
Okay, I'm just gonna sit down here. I'm looking around for a seat, see if there's anything I can sit down on. Fine for relatively normal people.
Compiler, when you take a look at some of the papers to sign, you realize that it's actually a requisition form for a supercharger for like an electric vehicle that has been it's been filled out. Clearly not by you or Dr. Scott. You get the feeling that Dwayne probably was like, I'm going to be really proactive. And basically, it just needs like you and Dr. Scott to sign off on it being installed in your space. The wall charge is very slow. So, I mean, this is an option if you wanted to take it. But, also, the form is, there are several discolorations in the shape of little like, animal paw prints. Like, kind of tracking across the page.
Is that peanut butter?
You better hope it's peanut butter. Also, I mentioned this before, but I definitely want to do this. I want to do a little side adventure thing that is Spot and several of the possums going on some sort of heist or getting into hijinks or saving the team or something. I think that would be hilarious. So just keep an eye out for that on the horizon.
Absolutely, yeah.
All right. So while the two of you are chatting and kind of looking over the paperwork and whatnot, Spot suddenly kind of like stops hoovering and kind of wobbles a bit and then kind of reconfigures itself into basically a small computer screen. And like it's
Oh, whoa! It can do that.
Indeed, SPOT is short for Standard Polymorphic Operational Terminal. It is quite adept at changing what it can display itself as.
Like it.
Yeah, your possums can't do that, can they? Sorry, that was unnecessary shade being thrown at the possum squad. There, a little prompt kind of blinks for a second, and then it types out a message. Very clearly, it's not saying this; it's just like sort of repeating it. It's displaying a message that was sent to it. And basically, it's kind of like that old, really old school computer monitor, green dots, kind of all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of types out the two, compiler, the email address that compiler uses from, at just a random string of characters at yahoo.com, essentially. Subject is get a free facelift now, and it it kind of has a little flag next to it saying possible spam, and the message as it kind of types out, you very quickly gather that this is from Dr. Lee. It says there's been a development that is extremely time sensitive. It would be great if you could contact me so we could talk about it.
Okay. Is the rest of the blade still there?
The only piece that he took was the piece that was in your hand.
Okay.
Everything else. Oh, actually, the rest of the blade is still there. The pieces of the heart that were on the table are not.
Okay.
Ghost, you are further in the building in one of the classrooms. When you hear a commotion, it sounds like it's kind of a muffled sound of an impact or like a what's the word I'm looking for? Not a detonation, but
somebody dropped a mattress,
yeah,
in the middle
exactly.
of the hallway, but really, really big.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And you hear that, and it takes you a second to be like, "What the heck?" And then you hear people out in the hallway, kind of exclaiming, kind of yelling, "Oh, someone call an ambulance!" Type of thing.
I'll go out. I'm just doing TA work in the office, in an office. I will go out as Jessa and go take a look and see what the heck's happening.
Okay. There are a number of students and a couple other faculty that are kind of congregating around the door to one of the. It's not one of the back offices. It's basically it's sort of a conference room / lecture room that's often used for slightly fancier meetings and stuff like that. Press stuff occasionally happens in there when it's small scale, and they're all kind of congregating in front of that door and. A couple of faculty members are trying to keep they're trying to push their way through the students to kind of get through the crowd.
I'm going to grab my satchel. I'm going to go back into the office, make sure the shades are done, lock the door, change, and walk through the walls into the conference room.
Okay, all right. Yeah, that's not going to require an action. That's easy enough for you. You pass through a classroom that had a lecture going on a moment ago, but everybody's kind of like crowding the door, like trying to figure out what's going on. So you're able to basically just walk past the crowd of people that are now turned towards the back of the room without anybody even noticing you. And yeah, you get in there. It's like this is a couple seconds after everything has happened. Well, probably like a minute after everything has happened. So Eliza is starting to kind of like pick herself up. Like she's kind of like untangling herself from the chair. Timmy is like kind of sitting there, like kind of rubbing his head because he went back like right into the wall. So he's kind of dazed a little bit. And then say again.
Amber has a minute to get herself together from the shock. Then she's gonna go check on everyone because she's still on her feet. So
okay. Yeah, Professor Davis is Professor Davis actually looks like she's actually hurt. Like her getting thrown forward and then the chair kind of falling after her. She's like kind of bleeding from a head wound, and you know she's very groggy, kind of like trying to pick herself up, but she's having a hard time even getting up like to a seated position.
I'll call 911.
Okay, as you're going to help her and call her, Ghost walks through the wall, like basically directly in front of you.
Okay.
And I think this is a momentous occasion because this is the first time that any of our heroes have come face to face with each other.
It is.
Now,
And
here's the
Amber?
question. Oh, sorry, Amber, go ahead.
No. Go ahead, please.
I was going to say, here's the question. Does Ghost recognize Amber as Amber?
Probably.
Yeah.
Okay, I was going to say
I
probably
doubt
because...
there's any question in her mind. The person in front of her is who she's seen on TV.
Because
No
she
question
looks
whatsoever.
exactly like her. As a matter of fact,
Yeah.
I mean, I would even hazard a guess that because of the shockwave, Amber's glasses are either not on or they're like really like out of place. And she probably hasn't noticed.
That would have been the first thing she fixed.
Oh, out of habit. Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
No, not out of habit, because it's been drilled into her since she was 3.
Right. Okay, but still, I mean, Ghost is pretty smart, and it's not the most ironclad alias out there.
No.
So.
I'm in no way disputing that she will absolutely recognize her. I'm just saying Amber has her glasses on, so in her mind, she's fine.
I imagine Amber probably has like a spare pair of glasses at all times, just in case.
Yes, she does. That's what
It
she has
feels to me like it feels to me like this agreement, right? We all know she's Amber, but she's not doing superhero stuff, so she's just Amber.
Yeah, exactly.
Not sure whether that's caught on across the city yet, but that'll come in time. But as out of professional courtesy, fellow supers probably abide by that. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm just going to assume that she's not in superhero costuming right now. She's not. She's not on duty. I'm going to look at the first thing I'm going to probably see, aside from the fact that Amber's in front of me, is that the heart is gone. The shards of it are gone.
Okay.
And I'm going to ask, what happened here?
There was an explosion of bright white light, and then this pulse went off. Oh, you're Ghost. Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I
And
just
you are
called
Miss?
911. Huh?
And you are Miss?
Oh, I'm Amber Anderson. I'm with the Daily Fortune.
Nice to meet you. Can you go back a little bit before the explosion? What led up to it?
Amber will fill you in on all those things. At one point, pausing to say, "By the way, your eyes are really cool. How do you get them to do that?"
I don't know.
Oh, well, they're really neat. So,
Thank you.
however you do it, good job. Anyway,
Eliza at this point has recuperated enough to like she's on her feet. Like she was checking on Timmy to make sure he was okay. Once Ghost came in, like she gets to her feet and she fishes her phone off the ground, and, like, she's make sure the voice recording is on, and she kind of like shoves it into Ghost's face and says, "It can't be a coincidence that you're here and so is the heart. What's going on? Was Professor Holland vaporized? Where is he?"
I don't know. All I understand is that the heart is causing troubles again, and the shards seem to be, if not as dangerous, still dangerous compared to the intact form. This will take some investigation.
She speaks directly into her phone for a second. She says, "You heard it here. Heart trouble in Portland," and then kind of points it back at you, like as she finishes what you were saying.
Honestly, this is this is a new development, and I'll be in touch once I know more.
She says, "All right, well, I'll just be over here helping my colleague." And she says that very coyly, like she very clearly has like the voice recorder on her phone still on. And she goes over to check on Timmy, like, who is basically fine, if not a little bit shaken up. And Amber, you were checking on Professor Davis, right?
right.
Okay. Do you have any like medicine skill or anything like that? Any first aid training?
I would think she has probably basic first aid training, just because that seems like the kind of thing she would do, but I don't have any actual skills for it.
Okay.
Her mom might also require her to have had some basic first aid.
Yeah.
You might be bulletproof, but that doesn't mean other people are, sweetie.
Exactly. If you're going to help someone, you have to actually help them.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Do you want to give me an intellect action to see if you can help kind of get her
Okay.
situated?
Well, just for fun, I'll go ahead and play this 8 of Doom.
Yes! Starting off strong.
Yeah, well, I have 2 Doom cards and 1 big strength card that I kind of like to save. So, yeah, so that gives me a 12.
Okay. You can go ahead and draw your card back. That'll go in the discard. And Professor Davis has she suffered a pretty nasty head injury. Nothing that's going to be like incapacitating long term, but definitely like it knocked her for a loop. It also looks like her knee has been twisted pretty badly. She got tangled in the chair as it kind of tumbled over,
Right.
which is Ghost. Is going to be a bit of a problem because there is a softball tournament coming up here soon that Professor Davis was really looking forward to. But
I'm going to look at the beefcake and say, "Can you break the chair and make a splint?"
Well, I can try, he says, and makes a big show of it being really hard to break the chair and all of that. And I do actually have performing, so I do actually make a decent show of it.
Give me a willpower action. We'll use performing as the thing, yeah, because you don't want it to be obvious because Eliza's right there. Let's see.
Again, starting off strong, I'll play the 3 of Doom.
Oh,
Get out of
yeah.
You have a willpower card.
I know, and it's nice and big, and I'm thinking about saving it. And also, I'm not that worried about people knowing. Dana is not that worried. She is, but Dana isn't. So that is a 12.
Okay, go ahead and draw your card back.
And again, I do have performing.
Yep.
So.
So as Amber is kind of doing that, trying to make it, Eliza kind of she's watching this. She looks at you, Ghost, and looks at Amber and looks back at Ghost and kind of are you buying this? Because I'm not buying this. But she does not. She very specifically does not say a word. She just kind of does the. Okay, I guess we're playing the game.
I will literally look back at her knowing the recorder's on and just go.
Once
None of
once the chair,
Amber-
He looks like a bodybuilder.
she does. What'd you say, Amber?
I said Amber notices none of this because
Yeah.
she's giving her all for her performance.
Once the like the leg of the chair does come away, Eliza says, "Wow, Amber, that's impressive. You're really strong." Um,
Oh, thanks, I work out.
so you put together a splint for Professor Davis real quick. She's a little bit more with it. Like you've kind of got her sitting up, like against, sitting back against the wall, and with her leg kind of sort of propped up on a stack of books or something. I don't know. Kind of the knee immobilized with the splint and everything like that. And she's kind of like she's rubbing her head and she says, "What happened to James? Where is he?" At which point Timmy speaks up and says, "Do you mean Professor Holland? I thought it was something wrong with my camera, but he kind of like fumbles with it for a second and then pulls up the viewfinder and turns it for the two of you to look at."
What do we see?
So you see Professor Holland on the camera, but it's it's almost like it's been like badly CGI, like badly photoshopped to be an like this hazy outline of Professor Holland with a much more solid but less distinct figure kind of like inside that outline. Like it was badly superimposed. And it's a very strange like effect. And then like he kind of clicks through like a couple of pictures, and the figure inside this superimposition starts to become a lot more clear, and you see Amber, you see what you saw immediately after the flash of light. It's still kind of hazy, but you can make out some of the features and things like that, some of the identifying characteristics of this person.
Okay.
Do I recognize this person?
No.
Okay.
You know what? I take that back. Give me an intelligence or an intellect action. We'll use history as the.
Okay. So that's plus 5, 18 plus the history as the skill.
Okay, go ahead and draw your card back. Oddly enough, you do. It's weird because like it takes you a second to be like, huh, but the camera effect actually is what helps you sort of like come to a decision like, yeah, I've definitely seen this guy before. You've seen similar pictures of someone like this in some of your textbooks and some of the books you've read. Specifically, there was I think we all know who Rasputin is from Russia. So
Yep.
there was a guy, a gentleman, in the U.S. in the 20s and everything like that, who was very prominent in the kind of spiritualism movement that kind of swept through, kind of started in like the northeast of the states, like kind of upstate New York area and stuff like that, like mediums, et cetera, et cetera. It was really kind of big kind of during that era. And this guy was very prominent in those circles, just showed up in a number of different pictures, sometimes not as the focus, like in the background, but there are a number of sort of like articles or like academic papers written about this guy and how he was involved in driving a lot of really kind of shady things. Not so much on the side of like, we're going to scam people, which was already a legit thing in real life and was shady enough, but like a lot of rumors of like kind of secret societies and things like that are linked back to this guy. As for a name, you don't know a name, but he had a title that he was often referred to by as kind of like a placeholder, the High Theurge.
Oh. That might be the High Theurge. Strange. Body swapping, or was Professor Holland an illusion?
Actually, you know, Ghost, that Professor Holland wasn't in today because his TA was complaining about having to take over his lesson plan again.
What does class 4 mean?
So you would have had the documents like to read over and everything like that. A class 4 is basically like there has been either grievous bodily harm or a fatality that the police believe is superhuman related, but is not an active it's not an active emergency.
Okay, so like murder scene, crime scene. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Guess this little catch up is gonna have to wait. We are the only ones in the building, so I guess we better get down there.
Yeah. Do you need a ride? I have a car. I would just run, but
Special sort of super car with like gadgets and stuff.
no, it's just a car.
It's just a Toyota Camry.
Yeah.
Maybe we can sort that out a bit later. Okay, let's get in your efficient foreign car.
It's a hybrid, yeah.
I like it. We all gotta do our bit, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to say that KJ has kept and is wearing Hornet's knife.
Okay, yeah, I'll allow that.
Yeah.
Does KJ does
Have
not
knife
have
skills? No.
knives? Okay, all right, that's fine.
But-
Something to work towards. I'm going to quickly
Yeah.
add that to your sheet. 1 second.
Souvenir. It's a fancy knife. Like, this is a really nice knife.
Okay, before
Actually,
before we
wait.
go to the car, I want you to come down with me to the lab. I gotta pick some things up, and I can
Sure,
do
yeah.
anything.
Do you know what you need? I can just go get it real fast.
This ain't an emergency, is it?
I
Well,
suppose not. I don't know. I like to be prompt, but sure, yeah.
Don't know if you read all the files or
Oh, definitely. They're all locked away in
down
here.
with everything, but I'm conducting important genetic studies on superheroes. So, people with powers. So, you have a right to waive your participation in the study, but if you can, I'd like a blood sample, hair sample, urine sample. Not right now. That
I was gonna
okay?
say. Sure. Suppose.
Apart from helping with my studies, it could help more directly when it comes down to enhancing your own powers at some point. Still working out the little kinks in my technology, but I think someday soon it might be pretty helpful.
Alright, yeah. I mean, for science.
You're a good kid.
All right. Well, I think what we're going to do here is, unless there's anything else you want to do before that, we'll jump to the park.
I guess we stop and draw some blood, and then we go to the park.
Yeah, you see Dr. Scott grab this little sort of fancy-looking gun-type device with a slot for putting in these little plexiglass vials, and like she's grabbed a handful of those and just shoveled them into her lab coat pockets. I said, "Okay, that's me. Let's go."
Great.
All right. So
I don't really do the whole costume thing. There's no point. I mean, who am I going to disguise myself as, really?
A different possum person?
Exactly. As it is, it's just nice to get out on the street without, well, hopefully not too many people screaming and running away.
What's up, man?
Oh, that's right. You've got the monstrous hindrance. I gotta remember that. I mean, what? No, don't worry about it. It'll be fine. Just let me take a quick glance.
You're just
What we gonna do? This is all a bit new to me. I'm used to just past decade or so. I just used to hanging out at night, staying away from public places when there's people around. Yeah, it's a pretty rough gig being part human, part possum.
I don't doubt that.
Make the best of it, though. You arrive at the park, and it's like there's police tape and everything like that that's set up, and it looks like the perimeter is a fairly big one. Like there's police and emergency vehicles are parked in the little parking space, this little like kind of lot, and they're preventing anybody else from kind of parking in and things like that. You guys have like basically like a little badge that you show that like it's official union badge. And so a couple of the cops, when you're pulling up, they come over to kind of like tell you, no, you can't park here, yada yada. You show them the badge, and they kind of look in and kind of do like they kind of catch themselves as they see Dr. Scott and several possums in the back seat.
My car.
They exactly. Scotchguard is your friend. And then they kind of.
Boys, it's rude to stare.
Sorry, ma'am. Sorry. Yeah, go ahead. And then they wave you through.
Thank you.
Once you get there, you park. One of the officers, who's clearly been like they've radioed ahead to warn this guy. He comes over and he says, I'm afraid, Dr. Scott, I can't. I have to insist that your pets, companions, minions, what do they fall under?
They're just possums and a raccoon. I
Okay.
mean, don't you think there's loads of them in the park already? What, you're gonna round them all up? You're gonna keep all the squirrels out your crime scene?
I mean, we are trying to do our best. Not to mention, our canine units can get distracted. Would you mind leaving them in the car? I know it's an inconvenience.
I rake up some biscuits without even asking KJ and just like spread it on the seats for them to distract them and say, okay, guys, you stay here. I'll be right back. That's good. That's good.
He says, I do have to ask, of course, that you ensure that you've provided them with water and you crack the windows. It's, city ordinance and,
You think I don't know how to look after my own animals?
Sorry, you're right. Actually, one last thing. Can I,
Please.
this is totally unprofessional. Can I get your autographs real quick? My kid is, like, super excited about this whole thing. The whole union thing, I mean.
Yeah, sure.
Great. Like, he takes out, like, his little notepad and he, like, hands you a pen and everything.
Dr. Scott writes, okay, what's your kid's name?
Sally.
Sally, stay in school or you'll end up like me, Dr. Scott. Dr. Head Scott. And it back.
I guarantee you that when this guy goes home later tonight and shows his daughter's gonna be like, so wait, if I drop out of school, I'll become a superhero like her? He's gonna be like, no, that is not the message. That's the wrong message here.
Oh my.
But yeah, so once you get everything settled, you kind of get escorted to kind of the center of the perimeter, and it's kind of just in the tree line, and it's kind of a grisly scene. KJ, you recognize a detective that's there, because this is comic book police departments where one detective does everything. So apparently, because the artist doesn't want to have to write like 17 different distinct detectives that are constantly reappearing in the series. But this is a Detective Joseph Gray that you've met before, and he is
Use of my leadership here to kind of just sit back and not actually do very much, but improve KJ's confidence in his own abilities.
Absolutely. So with the leadership skill, you can use it in one of two ways. One, right out of the book, is you can do a willpower action at a difficulty, I believe, 12, in order to give everybody on the team a +1 to all their actions, for the remainder of the scene in, furtherance of the plan. Alternatively, and this will come in more handy when there's a large group of you, you can do a leadership action in advance of going into whatever situation you're going to be going into, and depending on how high you score, you can actually take a card from everybody and reassign them throughout the team. So it's potentially really good, like basically representing coordinating so everybody gets the best use of their cards and their abilities. That may not be applicable here, so the first one's probably what you want to do.
Yeah.
Just a willpower action, if you would please.
Okay, I don't have any willpower cards, so I'm just going to chuck out this Doom card. Get rid
Yes! First card of the game is a Doom card. Score for me.
of it. Interesting.
That gives you a 13 total, I believe?
Yeah.
Okay. That is enough, because the difficulty is 12. So...
Can there be like some sort of junior police officer who's like bringing the detectives coffee, and Dr. Scott just blithely takes one of them off him and goes to stand next to the senior detective and look like she's meant to be there?
Absolutely.
Starts directing and says, KJ, I read in your file you're pretty good at the old criminology thing, so why don't you take a look at the scene? I'll talk to the detective here, find out what we got exactly.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Trust
Make sense, I suppose.
All right.
Yeah.
Put that over there in the discard, and then you can go ahead and draw your card back, Dr. Scott. So any action that you guys take in this scene is going to get a +1, unless Dr. Scott gets knocked out, in which case you'll have a -1 for the duration. But that's what's the
That's
likely.
why I got this coffee.
Exactly. The detective kind of like looks at you taking the coffee, glances at his partner, and Detective Gray specifically reaches over and grabs the remaining cup of coffee. And his partner kind of like throws his hands up and like kind of like walks off to go talk, like liaise with some of the other uniformed officers. And Detective Gray says, "So, you're official now."
Yeah.
Yeah,
Whole
the vote.
union business is gonna make life a lot more interesting for you boys.
Says, "Well, look, as long as you're making our lives more interesting and safer, I'm okay with it. Start causing trouble, well..."
But I understand that's the idea, so don't worry, officer.
Yes. I will hold out my hand. I'm Kinetic Justice. You can call me KJ. And you, Detective
Detective Gray.
Greg. Pleasure to meet you.
Let's see
I'm
here.
Dr. Scott. I'm here in more of a consultancy role.
So I met him as Nikki, so...
You did. I was trying to decide if I mean, he is a decent detective, and the Doom card that was played did yield me a willpower card.
Oh. Look. Am I gonna need a full face mask? Is that what's happening? People picking out my identity left, right, and sideways?
Give me a manipulation or a willpower action using manipulation to see if you can beat his
Right.
powers of deduction.
Let's play this willpower card.
He's supposed to have.
I don't want everybody knowing who I am. And then we'll play. Well, give me another one. Ugh. All right, that's uncalled for. That is a total of 12.
Total of 12. Okay.
So I don't have any relevant skills. Unless espionage can apply.
Manipulation applies.
Okay. That's right. It's a willpower action. Never mind.
Okay.
KJ's not a person.
Go ahead and draw your card back. I will put these in the discard.
All right. You know what? We'll take that. We take those.
Kind of shakes your hand. Transfers the cup of coffee. Shakes your hand. Transfers back. And he says, "Is this the sort of response time we can expect going forward?" You know what? It doesn't matter. It's not important. We can discuss all that later.
Should we have been here sooner? Are we late?
He says, late, no, but just it's good to know. It's good to know what to expect. That's all.
It's the first day, Detective Gray. We're the only two in the office, so we took a bit of time getting here. We'll probably tighten things up a little bit in the future.
Great. That's okay. Well, let's get down to it, shall we?
What have we got?
He kind of walks you into the tree line a little bit, and it's very clear that this scene was staged, kind of set up for what happened here. Neither of you has much knowledge in that, so we'll come back to that in a minute. There is a corpse. It is been very badly savaged. There's a fair amount of blood in the scene and everything like that. And Detective Gray says witnesses claim to see some sort of creature, some sort of beast. One of them said he checks his notes and very clearly is reading verbatim, "A wolf man like you see in those movies."
Okay.
Interesting. Okay. I can already think of two possibilities.
He kind of looks at you and waits for you to expand on that.
Oh, well, Coyote could be mistaken for a werewolf. Though this doesn't seem like his usual MO. He's an idiot, but doesn't strike me as a killer. And then I've heard about there's an actual, I haven't seen them yet, but there's an actual werewolf in town somewhere. So.
On the other hand, people say all sorts of crazy stuff, don't they? I had someone trying to claim that they'd seen a Bigfoot the other week.
Detective Gray kind of...
Evidence tells us.
He says, "I'll let you take a look around the scene. Maybe you'll recognize something. I believe, Dr. Scott, you've got some experience in dealing with this Coyote guy. So..."
I'm aware of him.
No, you've met Coyote too?
You could say that. He's not a great guy.
No, I'm sorry.
Says no. In fact, he put a couple of my fellow officers in the hospital a few times. So.
Oh.
That sounds like Coyote.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
Right.
some samples. Put on some gloves and pull out a little kit.
KJ does the opposite, takes off a glove. Do you mind if I touch the scene? I need to make contact to use my abilities.
The detective seems a little bit like his first instinct is to say hell no, but he kind of like clearly he's been briefed on the whole like things have changed slightly, you know, things are going to be slightly outside the norm, and he kind of takes a deep breath and he stands back and says, "Be my guest. Try to contaminate as little of it as you can."
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, I'm gonna touch the body and postcog.
And that's all. It's not signed or anything like that. It's just from context and the content of the email. It's kind of like a not exactly a coded message, but it's not explicitly saying anything either.
Very well. Apologies, Dr. Scott. I appreciate the introduction, but it seems I must cut our conversation short. I apparently need to get a facelift.
Well, I think you got a lovely pixelated face there, compiler, but whatever. You need a hand with
I
anything?
appreciate that. I am unsure. Perhaps. I will simply need to find out, I suppose.
Well, I guess we can get this supercharger in here pretty soon, and then hopefully you can charge up a lot faster.
That would be ideal, though I wonder if I'm compatible with the charging port. Regardless.
You only need to charge up. You never have any downtime or anything like that. Guess you don't sleep.
Well, the truth of the matter is I have been having rather a difficulty lately in I do not know how to choose what research to pursue. My former self is extraordinarily petty and vindictive, and all the science he has done is based on him feeling slighted. Given that I generally no longer feel slighted in that way, I have difficulty finding a place to start, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, you're that. She flicks through the badly torn and stained folder that she's brought with her. Oh yeah, Dr. Calamitous? Oh god, that guy is an asshole. I mean, you're his personality engram, right? But you don't
Well,
seem like an
just his
asshole, I
memories,
guess.
but
Ah, yeah, of course. Once you dispense with all that pent up male frustration that he has, then I guess what's left over is kind of half decent super scientist. Well, I gotta say, I met Calamitous a few times, and I much prefer you, Compiler.
I appreciate that. But yes, as I say, it is good to see you again.
Ah. Look, I mean, I know that whole thing with the giant lava lamp was a bit of a clusterfuck, but don't hold it against me, okay?
Why would I? It made my former self look foolish. This is my favorite thing.
Well, as long as we're on the same page. Well, look, I just gotta go next door. I think I heard some banging, and I think my possum friends might be getting into a little bit of trouble, but I'll be back in 5 minutes, and once you know what's going on, if you need my help, I got a free afternoon.
That is much appreciated, Doc. Thank you.
Dr. Scott rushes next door to see what chaos her friends have wrought.
We're gonna the final panel for this little scene is gonna be of the jar of peanut butter is sitting in the middle of the floor, and Petey and Washington are basically facing off on either side of it. Petey is wielding the plastic knife the way like in the episode of Star Trek where they're fighting with like the weird pugil sticks or whatever. Yeah, exactly. Washington's kind of got like this like stance like come at me, bro, and like they're kind of hissing at each other. The other possums are all kind of gathered around, like kind of like waiting to see what happens. Um, and yeah, we'll cut there. We're gonna jump forward a little bit in time. Compiler, how are you going to respond to Dr. Lee? Are you going to go physically try to meet her, or are you going to send a message?
Well, since she said it was, such like urgent time sort of situation, I assumed that it would just call her. But if that's no
Okay.
good,
That's fine too. I'm either way. So we're going to cut to the call has connected. The floor is yours, Compiler, to start the conversation.
Good afternoon, Doctor. I received an email about a facelift. I do not have one, but it might be nice.
She is very clearly like somewhere where she wants to be careful about anybody overhearing. She kind of like does a quick check over her shoulder, and like she's clearly got you on her phone, and she kind of like leans down a little bit and wait, are you doing FaceTime or just a call?
I assume it's just a phone call.
Oh, okay.
Because Compiler's got that internally. For FaceTime, it would need Spot's help. So.
That's true. So you can hear some noise in the background and everything like that. And she kind of says in a hushed voice, I think I know where our previous person of interest. Well, I don't know where they are, but I think I know a way we might be able to find them. The problem is things have just become a bit more, stressful. Richard Hark, the CEO, just got out of a meeting with the guy from Blockade Securities, and from what I can gather, it looks like they have come to some sort of an arrangement for Blockade to hunt down Facelift.
I see. That is potentially alarming. I do not know. My only interaction with Blockade was eminently pleasant.
Well, Blockade normally isn't like that, and I get the feeling that Blockade was given the directive to bring any remains back to the company. If you catch
I
my
see.
drift.
Yes, that does make things more urgent. When we last spoke, you mentioned a list of people that Facelift had been trained to become. Is that still a potential option for pursuit, or would that be too slow at this point?
I can give you that list of names, absolutely. But there's another. The call goes like quiet for a second, like clearly she's like hit the mute button, but it's still connected. And a minute goes by, she kind of comes back and says, "Sorry about that. I had to talk to a colleague for a moment." So it looks like Blockade has some sort of psyops division, and they're going to be running a personality profile on what they know about Facelift's fairly rudimentary personality. Apparently, they're going to be comparing that to some missing persons reports and other reports of just bizarre behavior, erratic behavior, things like that, to try to narrow down the list. I was thinking, if we can find one of the Facelift's recent targets, there might be a way to find it by essentially doing a genetic sequencing or genetic tracing. Um, Anyways, I'll get you the list of names, but I wanted to let you know that we need to address this sooner rather than later.
Absolutely. Thank you for keeping me in the loop. I appreciate it.
Thank you for your help. I'd look for it personally, but I'm under a lot of scrutiny right now, so I gotta go.
Perfectly
And
understandable.
hangs up, very abruptly hangs up.
Hmm. Well, that is unfortunate news. Yeah, then I think compiler's basically just gonna keep standing there until its charge cycle completes.
Okay. In the meantime, a couple additional messages do come through. One is a list of essentially the initial test subjects for facelift to like kind of duplicate as part of the trials, and the names are very clearly like they're like de-identified, but they do give you some general demographics information and stuff like that, as well as like some of the parameters that were given to facelift as part of these trials. It's not a ton to go on, but at the very least, it is it kind of gives you a little bit of insight into facelift's sort of like directives and MO.
Okay,
Um,
sounds good.
the other message is kind of basically just recapping what Dr. Lee just told you about, like, you know, they're doing a personality profiling based on like the most updated information they've got, as well as like looking at like local police reports and things like that to kind of see if there's anything that might fit the MO. Apparently, they don't have that yet, but that is the plan. There is one additional detail added into this message where Dr. Lee says that apparently Blockade was promised exclusive access to this technology that allows Facelift to duplicate the appearance of other people. If they successfully bring it back. So yeah, that's the information that you get. What do you want to do?
Okay. Well, I suppose once its charging cycle is completed, compiler will indeed go back next door. Because Dr. Scott offered help, and we're talking genetics here, and though it is intelligent, it is a mechanic, so...
I mean, aren't genetics
it's
just
just gonna go
mechanics
ahead
on a really, really, really tiny
Yeah,
biological level?
on the level of the angstrom.
Yeah.
That's certainly fair. But yeah, no, I think it'll go next door, and it's going to replicate the exact same sort of knocking pattern that Dr. Scott used earlier on the shutter, because that's just how it does, so...
That's fair. All right.
I've said it once, and I'll say it again. No illegal pit fighting when I'm out of the room. Now nobody gets any peanut butter. Put the lid back on and put it in the lockable fridge, like one of those old 1950s style fridges that you can lock. I don't want to hear any complaining. You were warned.
There's a lot of possums pouting in the room when compiler enters. Or sulking, I guess, more than pouting.
What's their reaction to compiler's sudden appearance?
So, most of them scatter because, again, compiler's large metal creature, I guess, in their eyes. That kind of does freak them out. Venkman, on the other hand, seems like just absolutely enraptured. Like, just totally curious and, like, probably wants to climb all over compiler. Whether or not
Oh,
compiler
hey.
allows that, I don't know. But
I don't think it would do anything to stop that because I don't think it would know how to prevent it without injuring the animal. So
Hey, folks, it's okay. It's just a colleague. He's okay. Venkman, that's rude. Get off him. Get off it.
it
Venkman
is.
crawls underneath the lab coat and basically just settles in.
Well, looks like you got a friend there. This is Venkman. Venkman, this is Compiler.
It is a pleasure to make your acquaintance, Venkman.
Venkman just kind of blinks at you, like makes eye contact with the faceplate, just kind of blinks.
Yeah, he likes you.
This is good to know. I am not used to being liked by animals.
Well, looks like you made a new friend.
That is pleasant, but I'm afraid I'm here to take you up on your earlier offer of assistance. There's something rather urgent going on, and frankly, I don't
Oh.
believe that I can handle it on my own.
Okay, well, what are we talking here? Are we talking, death robots? Are we talking alien invasion? Are we talking fugitive on the loose that no one can catch?
In a interesting way, a combination of two of those. Um, Project Facelift was a creation of an advertising agency, a artificial intelligence, a robot that had the ability to change its appearance entirely, become anyone, anything. And it got loose, which I am perfectly fine with. To the best of my understanding, it doesn't intend to harm people, but it is now being hunted by blockade securities, who have been apparently promised access to the transformative technology should they capture it. So,
Those guys. You know, they destroyed my previous lab. You can call it a
I was
lab.
unaware.
Yeah, they're a problem. Okay, so what? We gotta save this facelift guy, or we've been
Well,
asked
the
to
hope
help
would be
blockade.
to. Yes, I suppose the hope would be to locate Facelift and ensure that it could not be found by other means. Apparently, Blockade is going to be able to find it psychically, which is a surprise to me. I was unaware that that could be done for artificial intelligences.
Just to clarify, so it's not so much they're going to do it psychically. It's so psyops is psychological operations,
I
not
totally
psychic
misunderstood
operations.
the psi in the superhero world.
My bad. Yeah, it's funny that means two different things here. So they're basically going to be using like psychological profiling and things like that to kind of like sort of predict what it might do. Um, so, and I mean,
Okay,
I
my
guess in
mistake.
theory they might have psychics that help like see the future and whatnot. Who knows? But the general understanding or gist of what Dr. Lee provided was it's more mundane means of finding
Okay.
it. So apologies for
Okay, yeah,
the
that does
confusion
change some stuff. Thank you.
Okay, so well, I mean, I'll do what I can, but I don't know how I can help find this other robot. It's not really my area of expertise.
Well, no, I understand, but my contact provided me with information that suggests that it might be able to be traced genetically. Apparently, when Facelift adopts an identity, it does so thoroughly.
Oh, really?
If we were to locate one of the people that it had become, then perhaps some sort of genetic trace could be initiated.
Interesting. So it's like sort of robot with some sort of biomimetic mesh on its outer surface or something, on its chassis.
I would have to assume, but I have only ever heard about the project secondhand.
Fascinating. Well, I mean, I guess the first thing we gotta do is find it, or find somewhere where we know it's been recently, and then maybe we can collect a sample or something. If it's left any residue, any biological residue, I could probably scan that and have a look, see what's what.
That would be ideal. For the moment, I have a list of traits that it was trained to emulate, so I suppose the hope would be that we could analyze these and perhaps predict where it is. There was another possibility, but truthfully, I don't know if it's even available anymore. But when it was built, I was informed that it had some sort of pingback mechanism, that it was forced to respond to a specific signal. I don't know if it would have disabled that by now.
Oh, interesting. Well, better give me everything you got, and we can take a look over this.
I think compiler is just going to like physically detach one of its fingers, which for the moment just seems like a finger, and then it'll use its transmutation power to turn that into a thumb drive. It's just handing you the data. It's a literal thumb drive.
Oh, neat. I like it. You can just change bits of your own body as well, just like that?
Only temporarily, and I cannot mimic other. I could not appear to be an organic life form, but if I were to need a different device, then yes, I could alter it.
Well, trust me, appearing as an organic life form is overrated. Okay, let's see what we got. I will plug in the thumb drive into my computer system.